welcome. You're listening to The Best of Investing on Talk 910. I'm your host, Edward Brown. Mark Hanf is off today, but I'm pleased to have as my co-host Rob Spinoza of RPM Mortgage and Mike Zalin of Madrone Financial Advisory. Our phone number is 888-912-1190. Use that number to answer the trivia questions for 3 vacations given away during each commercial break. You got it. We're giving away 9 vacations during this show. I know I've got a little frog in my throat, so it's a little bit of a head cold. Please excuse me. Okay, the vacations are not sponsored by the radio station, but by Lighthouse Resort and Marina, located 1 hour northeast of San Francisco. The vacations are free. Their only request is a $75 cleaning fee to cover the housekeeping expenses. And since we knew Mike was coming on today, I decided the trivia theme was baseball in the movies. Yay.
No, you know what? I'm not out of this one yet.
Okay, all right. Well, you like movies, so that might work. Okay. Our website is bestofinvesting.com. We're also on television, Comcast Channel 26 and AT&T Channel 99, Saturdays at noon and Sundays at 6 p.m. Rob, you said you've got some compelling stuff for us.
By the way, how many quarters in a baseball game?
Actually, I did ask, but I haven't done the game another time. Go ahead.
No, so I wanted to jump right in and throw kind of a softball here, about buying being cheaper than renting. I've been reading a lot of articles, and what's funny about a lot of these is in the Bay Area here, where we're talking about, you hear about home prices and how high our median home prices are in many of the Bay Area counties. Yet at the same time, when you read on the national perspective, you see that rents are becoming increasingly less affordable as well, and that's forcing many people to contemplate what it would take to purchase. Well, RealtyTrack is saying that the monthly payment on a median-priced home is more affordable than the monthly fair market rent on a 3-bedroom property in 76% of the U.S. counties. And these are they encompass 461 counties with populations of at least 100,000. So another interesting attribute of this is they're only considering a 10% down payment.
Oh, okay.
So, that gets really interesting here in the Bay Area because that tends to be the entry, or that tends to be the hurdle to getting into the market is down payment. When you're talking about the home prices that we see here, buyers may have the income to support the loan, but they think they don't have the down payment to get into the property. So what this is telling us is that in a lot of areas, that isn't the hurdle. A lot of folks do have 10% down, and if they do, they may be better off looking at buying instead of renting.
But is it still the idea of banks are still not lending as much? Is that a hurdle there?
Yeah, there are challenges with getting a loan, no question about that. The regulations that have been imposed and enforced since the real estate downturn are prohibitive for some folks, but what we are seeing is that despite the efforts in Congress, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, who back in FHA, who back about 9 of 10 loans still made, are still in operation. I don't see them going away in the near future. And that credit, while it may not be accessible to all, is something that loan officers, people who do what I do, should understand very well by now. They should be able to assess very early in the process if someone can qualify for that kind of loan.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, I would say too that one of the other things is that you've got buyers or potential buyers out there. They see it from both sides of the spectrum because if you can't buy, then you're looking at what happens when you stay in a rental property. And one of the interesting things I was talking about with a real estate agent the other day was, a question we're getting a lot. Mike, you can probably talk to this as well. People are saying, well, do you think rates are going up this year? Do you think the Fed's actually going to move? Are they going to start raising rates? And we saw an interesting thing happen with the jobs number, 2 weeks ago? Consensus was about 200,000 new jobs. We got 126, and the bond market, for a short while, really liked that news. And the reason they liked it is because they figure, okay, the Fed's got a dual mandate. They can raise rates if the job market is healthy enough and if inflation is low enough. And inflation is virtually non-existent. So they're looking at the jobs market, and here this report comes in underwhelming, and now you've got rates potentially staying where they are for the balance of the year. So real estate agents, of course, still want to know, are their buyers going to be approved if rates go up? What will happen to the market if rates go up? And what I noticed is that if you take a median-priced home here in the Bay Area, let's say in San Francisco, median-priced home, and you put 20% down on that, That's about an $800,000 loan. So, you know, some people are rolling their eyes about that, but that's an $800,000 loan. If the Fed raised rates and we saw mortgage rates go up 50 basis points, so a half point on that, let's say you could get 4% today and you were looking at 4.5 at the end of the year, your payment would go up $250. Okay? Manageable for some in that case, but here's the interesting thing. If you are a renter right now and you're in a $3,000 a month rental property, your landlord could increase your rent more than that with 30 days notice. And what would you do about it? Because you can go, you know what I mean? You can go 10%, right? With 30 days notice.
Are you talking about rent control?
Well,
Or
just in general.
In general?
Yeah, in general. So you're looking at a potential increase in rent in a market like this. Interest rate shouldn't be your focus. You know, the other fundamentals of ownership should be at that point.
Well, if interest rates go up, meaning less people will qualify, then inherently more people become renters. To some degree, increasing the demand, which is what also would drive up the prices too.
Yeah, because at some point there's going to be that spread between.
Right. Well, I don't know, and I don't know that the market is right now. It seems like, and we kind of saw this on the downside too. I'd be curious to get your thoughts on it, but I remember when, because I was trying to rent a property out as a landlord back in 2009, 10, and the rental market was really soft. So when you're looking at that, and then prices were really soft on the housing side, so I wonder how it's going to look on the other end.
Well, I think a lot of that is strictly jobs, isn't it?
Yeah.
At that time, they're out of work. Nobody can afford anything.
Right.
It would seem to me that interest rates rising 0.25%, 0.5% is not really significant.
I agree with you on that.
It's going to be 2-3%. Those really make a difference, but the 0.25%, especially when so many people are anticipating it, bond market's anticipating it.
And
a lot of buyers who would maybe have waited to buy are anticipating it as well, so they're speeding up their buying decision.
Right.
So,
getting them off the fence, possibly. And then the other thing about that I find interesting is, everybody talks about this. The market's not certain. So if you did get a signal from the Fed, okay, we're raising rates, they go up 0.25, I think that could have an impact on the bond market that would again be favorable. Because now okay, they've started at this clip, and this is what we can expect. And getting, investors getting their head around something is far better than them not knowing what's going to happen.
It's interesting you mentioned about the interest rates. Mark couldn't be here today, but he said, make sure you mention this on the air. He said, interest rates were expected to go to 5%, but experts now are backing down, and the rates are expected to stay down for the remainder of the year, which is theoretically good for real estate, for buying, but not good for savers. Right?
Well, you might want to talk about that. It's killing savers.
For people who are trying to invest money.
The current low interest rate. Of course, it's forcing people further down the risk spectrum and forcing people into the markets, and to some degree, it's pushing people into real estate as well because the alternatives are less. So you have a certain amount of alternatives. One is real estate, one is bonds, cash, and stocks. Those are the gold, perhaps. Those are the primary ones. So if one is impacted, the others are naturally impacted too.
And that's what you seem to hear, like especially from older people who are used to CDs and all that. And then suddenly they're just rolling their CDs over and 1% if they're lucky.
I'll see, because when we get bank statements for qualifications, you'll see some folks have 90, 100K in a CD, and it's a point. And but the fact of the matter is they got into that when that was probably the best thing they could do safely.
People just do that; they'll just keep rolling it over, laddering it, or whatever. But it's interesting because Mark just came out with his newsletter, and the current interest rate that he's paying in the fund is 8.14%. And if you look at what's in the fund, the average is about 52% loan to value. So it's very, very conservative, and that's why there has not been any defaults, because who's going to default on a loan if you're only 52% LTV?
Something's got to be seriously wrong. I mean, major life event, if you will, to go south on a 50.
Exactly. I mean, you'll find a way to get money to pay that off because you don't want to lose your property.
What would be great is if those could become 10-year bonds, but unfortunately they tend to be very short-term investments, and so you have reinvestment risk because you can't buy a 10-year trust deed. Generally,
you're right. There's usually there might be a prepayment penalty, but not 10 years. It might be 6 months. Sometimes it's a year. And in fact, in Mark's case, he usually does loans from 6 months to 3 years. Sometimes he'll do a 5-year loan. The average probably stays on the book for maybe a year, and then he just constantly rolls it over. But if interest rates do go up, then at least he can participate in higher interest rates too.
Right.
So for those people who are interested, even though Mark's not here, we're going to give out his website. Check out PacificMoneyFund.com and see if you're interested in earning interest rates above 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5%. All right, we're going to cut to a first commercial break here. We're going to Mike's favorite theme, baseball, as well as mine. We're both baseball buffs. Or we like baseball. Okay, in the movie, excuse me, this is baseball in the movies. In the movie Mr. Baseball, Tom Selleck's character goes to Japan because a rookie, played by a real-life major leaguer, takes his first base spot. Who was that player? The first 3 callers with the correct answer win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the
Who's Tom
Lighthouse.
Selleck?
Magnum PI, right? Okay. The first 3 callers with the correct answer win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Call 888-912-1190. That's 888-912-1190 to answer this question. See, you thought I was going to ask, who started Pride at the Yankees or something, right?
You said it was easy, Edward.
I said one of them was easy. This one wasn't it. In the movie Mr. Baseball, that sounds like Bob Uecker, Mr. Baseball. Tom Selleck's character goes to Japan because a rookie, played by a real-life major leaguer, takes his first base spot. Who was that player?
With opening day just behind us, I think someone's going to grab this.
Okay, stay with us. You're listening to The Best of Investing. I'll give you a hint if you don't know.
I have no idea.
I've never heard of the movie or.
Oh, really? Okay.
And,
It was an okay movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely know you know the player, though. Well, we're going to move into
do you want to start with Social Security or advisory fees?
Social Security.
Okay. Well, it should be fresh in my mind. I just gave a presentation yesterday on Social Security.
Okay. Maybe that's how we should do it. You just give a presentation. Who'd you give it to?
Estate planning attorneys.
Very good.
So you can mention that I gave
Yeah.
a Social Security planning presentation. You don't have to mention it. Yeah, it'd be great if you could get a 10-year trustee that locked in at 8%.
Yeah.
So on and
So
so
we
forth.
can do. But also, what's nice about the short-term stuff is, you never know if people are going to damage their property, not keep it up, whatever. So you do short-term.
Sure.
Yeah,
There's pros and cons to it. Okay, here we go. Welcome back to The Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host. Mark Conf is off today, but we have Mike Zaidlin and Rob Spinoza in the studio with us. When we cut to the first commercial break, we asked this trivia question about baseball in the movies. In the movie Mr. Baseball, Tom Selleck's character goes to Japan because a rookie, played by a real-life major leaguer, takes his first base spot. Who was that player? Now, I think I'm going to give you a hint. I think he finished off his career with the Oakland A's, but he was mostly known for playing for the Chicago White Sox. Who was that?
I don't.
Who was the big hurt?
Oh, Frank Thomas.
Frank Thomas.
Yeah.
That is correct. Okay. Now, Mike, before we get to you for just a minute here, I did want to mention that
I can't wait.
you can't wait yet because listen to this because Mike gave a presentation to some estate planning attorneys, and you were discussing Social Security. So actually, let's move right on to you.
That must have
Tell
been
us-
a
Oh,
lights out party.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I think it was the pin drop expression was born there. That meeting. Over the yawning. I mean,
Over the yawning. No, come on. I know you got some good stuff for us.
snoring and yawning.
Okay, go ahead. So what were you talking about? Social Security.
Yeah. Basically, understanding Social Security claiming strategies and understanding the importance of Social Security within one's whole entire financial picture is really a critical decision. Social Security has almost 2,300 rules that apply to married couples, spousal benefits, survivor benefits, child benefits, disabled benefits, and a lot of people just approach Social Security almost as an afterthought. Oh, I don't know if it'll be there when I'm there, or I'll get my
That's what I do.
That's what I'm doing.
20, 25,000 or whatever a year, and it's not that much thought needs to go into it. But the reality is, Social Security plays probably the critical retirement planning role for at least half the population. And even if it doesn't, it's a decision that requires a lot of thought and knowledge of what are my alternatives. For most people, Social Security for a married couple is going to represent about close to $1 million in present net value. If you're 65, well, say you're 70, and you're entitled to a total of about 55 or 60,000 a year, which can easily happen for people who have 35 years of covered employment.
Right.
What will happen is if you were to basically take the equivalent of how much would it cost me to get that benefit in future years from an insurance company, it would be almost the equivalent of needing a check for about $1 million to get that 60,000 a year. Basically, it would be like a fixed immediate annuity of 6%.
In the old days, it used to be it seemed like the only choices were, gee, do I take it at 62 or do I take it at 65? But now there's at least 25 different decisions one can make if you're married?
Something like that? Yeah, it can get very complex for not only your own benefit, but how would that impact a spousal benefit and a survivor benefit?
So can you even narrow it down to like a handful of scenarios, or is it really case by case?
There are generally, like you said, a handful of scenarios, but within those scenarios, there's
nuances.
Which year do I take it?
Right.
What's the age difference between myself and my spouse?
Yeah.
What's the income difference between myself and my spouse? What are my life expectancies of both myself and my spouse? And I generally feel like you normally don't want to make this decision without running it through a good Social Security software package.
Yeah.
Even though I feel like I can usually spot the generally ideal decision until you run it through a calculator, and a really good one, and not just anyone. It's hard to know which one is the best decision. You can easily leave $300,000 or $400,000 on the table with the wrong decision. And you can easily pass up spousal benefits. You can have a spousal benefit wiped out by a government pension. For example, I'll get into an example later. But
let me sidetrack you on one thing there, because one calculation that we do, we were talking about it before. One thing that I do frequently is a rent versus own, and that's a calculator that someone can easily find online, right?
Yeah.
But it's only as good as the projections and the calculations you put into it, because
like what do you think interest rates are
right,
going to be, rent's going to go to?
Exactly. And sometimes folks, honestly, they don't even know their tax bracket, and here they are toying around with this calculator. Do you find similar things with that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that just goes to the larger issue of overall financial planning and integrating the Social Security claiming decision with your tax bracket, with your IRAs, and with your Roths, so that on an after-tax basis, you've maximized your total value.
That seems like a pretty large matrix that you could.
Well,
because
exactly.
There's a lot of moving parts.
There are, I think it's 2,300 rules and 10 complex mathematical formulas, one of which was described by an expert as being in 4 dimensions. So it can get complex. I'll just give you an example. If you are, first of all, if you're 62 and you're entitled to, say, $2,000 a month at that age, if you wait till you're 70, you're going to increase that amount by about 8% a year.
Okay.
And so that $2,000 a month will become $3,700 or so a month. Now, if you're single, that's one thought that you have to put into it. But if you're married, that will be the benefit that your surviving spouse steps up to if, for example, he or she has a lower workers' benefit. And so it's an estate planning tool. And you have to think, not how long is the lower earning spouse going to live, but how long is what is the life expectancy of the higher earning spouse? Because that's going to come into the equation. That will be the step up that the lower earning spouse steps up to, not only if you're married, but also if you were divorced. If you were divorced and married for at least 10 years and you aren't currently remarried, that's your survivor benefit.
But what if you're a polygamist and you have more than one wife? Then the complication
well,
really
if
happens.
you were married for 10 years to more than one spouse, you can pick generally which one you're going to
that's
take.
funny.
So depending on when you remarried. So.
Let me ask you a question, just because we're here in the Bay Area again. How does this work with now when you're talking about same-sex marriage? Is that something that was in that when they were when fighting for rights and all good for them for doing it, but when you're fighting for those rights, is that what that's part of what you're looking for parity with?
And Social Security basically will pay same-sex couples the same benefits as long as the marriage is a legal marriage,
right, okay,
and you're still residing in a state where it's legally recognized. And so I think that's 30 states now, or 34 states. However, to have gotten gotten the benefit if you're divorced, you would have had to have been married 10 years, and I think the first state to recognize same-sex marriage was in 2004, so we're only starting to see those come in for spousal and survivor benefits.
What kills me about all this is it takes all this brain power to figure it out, but yet the government administers it. So how the hell do they know?
That explains why it takes so much brain power to figure it out.
No, exactly. It's like, IRS rules are so
Right,
complicated
exactly.
sometimes they can't even figure it out. But Mike, obviously, you know more than the average bear.
Right.
So I assume you
Apparently
have
not about Tom Selleck and Japanese baseball.
No, but you do know about the Social Security, which is, like I said, that is kind of a major planning tool for a lot of people. And so you do have that software?
Well, yeah, I do. I do, and it's available. But one of the things I wanted to point out is one thing people don't really recognize about Social Security is it's inflation adjusted, and so it's not only inflation adjusted, but it's tax favored. If you, for example, only have primarily Social Security income, it's very possible none of that will be taxed, depending on your bracket. And so what that leads to is a general, for most people, should lead to a general awareness that $1 in Social Security income is going to be more important to me and more valuable on an after-tax basis than $1 from, say, an IRA distribution.
Right.
In fact, $1 from an IRA distribution will not only be taxed at whatever your marginal rate is, but it will potentially cause your Social Security income that was not otherwise taxed to become taxed, and suddenly your marginal rate on that IRA withdrawal is 46%.
Yeah,
if you're in a 25% bracket, which leads to then, should I have done a Roth conversion? Should I perhaps?
Not only that, but what potential tax deductions do you lose on Schedule A, like let's say medical expenses when your AGI is too high? I mean, you could really your marginal bracket could be 70% in some cases.
That's potentially, I suppose, that's potentially true. And so Social Security then just becomes, well, where does it fit within all my other financial planning? And if well, here's a telling statistic: 40% of people take Social Security at age 62, and 2% take it at 70. Despite the fact that it's growing at 8% a year for every year you don't take it, from 62 to 70, and there's no return that's federally guaranteed to give you 8%. And so it should lead to how can I get increased Social Security benefits? Can I take my IRA out early, for example? I'll be trading tax disfavored money for tax favored money.
And it's not either 62 or 70. You can choose any.
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
So, Mike, I got to ask you how.
I'm just getting started.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, this is a lot of.
Next baseball question, please.
Yeah, right. No, it's a lot of information, but it's
Stick around, guys.
It's very important, though. I can actually see the big benefit of this. I'm sure the audience is wondering, how do we get a hold of this guy? He's the only guy I know who's been talking about Social Security this way.
Well, actually, there's a lot more information about Social Security now, and you hear more people speaking about it because as all of us baby boomers get into our 60s.
I haven't heard too many people as knowledgeable as you.
Yeah,
honestly, I really haven't. So
they're out there. I'm not the only one, but it is an important part of financial planning, and it's an important decision and not something that should just be given short shrift. It's one of the largest and maybe the largest financial decision most people make outside of perhaps buying a house.
Yeah, that's a good point. So how do people get hold of you?
I can be reached at 415-785-4585.
Okay, very good. When we come back, we do have a couple of emails for you guys that we will get into. Now, we are going to go to the second trivia question here. All right, you ready? Baseball in the movies.
If you give me enough clues, I'll get it.
Yes, you will. Okay, in the movie The Natural, Robert Redford's character, Roy Hobbs, returns from a hospital stay to play in a final game for the New York Knights. In his last at bat, he breaks his famous Wonder Boy bat on a foul ball. What are the words on the bat that the Bat Boy brings him? Pretty cool, huh? Okay, the first three callers with the correct answer win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Call 888-912-1190. I guess you have to see the movie, huh? That's 888-912-1190 to answer this question. In the movie The Natural, Robert Redford's character, Roy Hobbs, returns from a hospital stay to play in a final game for the New York Knights. In his last at-bat, he breaks his famous Wonder Boy bat on a foul ball. What are the words on the bat that the Bat Boy brings him? All right, stay with us. When we come back, we're going to have some interesting email questions for our hosts, Rob Spinoza and Mike Zalin. Stay with us. You're listening to The Best of Investing. Okay. You know that one, Mike?
I have no
I
idea.
don't know
Did you
that.
see the movie?
Long time ago.
Yeah, I did it a long time ago.
Well, the next question I'm 99% sure you'll get.
Finally.
Yeah.
Started to lose some confidence here.
Yeah. Well, I listen. When I asked you about Napple Joy or whatever, and you
Lajoie, but that's
was that
who's
really?
counting.
Yeah. See,
His
and
first
now-
real- his
no,
real
the
name
guy
was-
who got died from getting thrown off a train or being
But anyway,
drunk.
Nap was only his nickname. His first name was Larry.
Yeah, but
More than you
we're
want.
talking like
Larry
1890s
Lajoie.
or
Napoleon.
That's his. That was his
Is it
nickname. Napoleon was his nickname.
Oh.
Larry was his first name.
I didn't know.
this is like, but he goes
Yeah,
way
so I'll
back.
tell
He,
you.
like he's
It
like
goes
turn
way
of the
back.
century.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
He beat out Ty Cobb for
Yeah,
batting
that's
average.
right.
Yeah, by a
Didn't
couple-
somebody just buy some piece of memorabilia that he was it a card or a glove or
It was Honus Wagner.
Well,
Honus
Honus
Wagner,
Wagner
that's
card,
right, yeah.
The biggie.
That's my financial investment of the week. Honus Wagner.
Yeah.
Wow.
Actually, that was fun.
Are you still doing the sports show?
I am. Unfortunately, Vern is not allowed to be on it because CBS said it was competition.
No.
Really? We're competition for CBS? Thank you very much. So, Bruce.
Maybe you
Bruce,
should merge with CBS.
Yeah, exactly. Bruce has been doing a great
I
job.
got
He's
it.
doing all kinds of great.
I got an underwriting condition that one of my borrowers does not have a greater than 25% ownership interest in Kaiser Permanente Medical Group.
Poor guy.
He works for Kaiser. The underwriter conditions for a letter to say you have a greater than 25.
It's just a typical of whatever company.
Dude.
you work for. Okay, here we go. Welcome back to The Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mike Zalen and Rob Spinoza. Mark Hoff is off today, Rascal. Okay, second trivia question. In the movie The Natural, Robert Redford's character, Roy Hobbs, returns from a hospital stay to play in one final game for the New York Knights. In his last at-bat, he breaks his famous Wonder Boy bat on a foul ball. What are the words on the bat that the Bat Boy brings in?
Blank stares
Blank
here.
stares.
Yeah,
It's a round ball and a round bat. You got to hit it square.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Savoy Special. I don't remember that one either. Okay, now before we get into email, next week we have a special trivia contest. The winner is going to get an overnight stay at the Oceano Hotel and Spa in Half Moon Bay. So leave the stress of the city behind and don't even have to leave the Bay Area. I like that. And escape to the Oceano Hotel and Spa in beautiful Half Moon Bay. Harbor is within reach. Enjoy gorgeous sunsets, fresh local seafood, and fun ocean adventures. They've made it easy with a special low weekday rate from April to June. They have 12,000 square feet of indoor and outdoor event space. They've also Half Moon Bay's premier destination for meetings and special events. And for more information, call them at 650-726-5400 or visit www.oceanohalfmoonbay.com. That's a beautiful place. I don't know if you guys have ever
Half Moon Bay is great.
Half Moon Bay,
Beautiful
great.
day,
And this
yeah.
place is very, very good. Okay, so here's the special trivia question. More than 25,000 people are injured each year by this household item. Which item? And here are the rules. No previous winners on the Best of Investing on any of our contests. Email the answer to edward@bestofinvesting.com by midnight tonight. Next week, we will announce from amongst the correct answers. Now, email time. Let's see here. For Rob, we got one for you. It says that the person was trying to buy, I'm going to summarize a long one here.
Mm-hmm.
Person was trying to buy a new home but can't write a contingent offer. Well, because there's no one's
Yeah,
accepting
no
those
one's
anyway.
accepting right.
They're thinking of holding on to the existing home and renting it out.
Yep.
What will the lender require?
This is a great question. It actually goes several layers deep. So the first thing you have to find out is if they can't sell their existing house, where are they going to come up with the down payment? Because most people will move up. So the largest percentage of their down payment for the new home comes from the proceeds of the sale of the old one. So you have to make sure that they have adequate funds for the down payment, and in the case of a jumbo loan, reserves, which are assets that you hold post-closing in your accounts, to make the transaction work. If you can do that, if you can swing that portion of it, then the way we view that existing home, we call it in lending speak a departure property. That means that you're departing it, you're going to rent it out, and you're going to occupy the new one as your primary residence. Now, several years ago, what people were doing was they were severely underwater on their existing house. They bought at the peak, and they would see the house down the street was now selling at a 50% discount. So they would tell the lender, "We're going to rent out our existing house." They would buy the new one. They would qualify for it, and then no sooner they moved in, they would foreclose on the old one. So they called it buy and bail. Never had a renter, never really, but they were pulling the wool over the
Very tricky.
Yes, for a little while, and then what the lending industry called it basically was buy and bail. So they sought to put in measures that prevent buy and bail from happening. So some of those that are fairly consistent through the industry are, you cannot qualify with the proposed rent on the old property when you go to qualify for the new one if you do not have 30%, at least 30% equity in the old property. Okay, so if you're underwater, it's not going to work. And in many cases, you'll need to document that with an actual appraisal. So your loan balance as shown on your credit report versus the appraised value of that old home, have 30% equity, okay, you pass that test, now you go to the next one. You need to have a lease agreement in place and a negotiated security deposit. So you can't have your brother saying, "I'm going to rent the place for whatever." So you now have lined up a renter, that renter has given you a deposit, you cash the deposit, we've documented all that, we will give you 75% of the gross rental income to offset your expense on that property, okay? So that's the way you qualify a departure property. It gets a little bit more tricky than that if you're trying to acquire a jumbo loan on the new side, because some of those investors will require that you have previous management experience before you become a landlord, okay? So you can see where I'm going with this. It's difficult. Yeah, it's difficult. It introduces a number of challenges and layers that we as a lender have to vet if you're going to make that scenario work. But people do it. And obviously in this environment right now, you see that because oftentimes you cannot move your house fast enough, or the circumstances just don't work that you can write a contingent offer, or you don't have the house sold yet. So yeah, that's the way it works.
Well, for more information, questions?
For more information, I work for RPM Mortgage. We are the third largest lender in the Bay Area behind a couple of the quote-unquote big banks. We know the Bay Area very well. I can be reached at 415-367-5959. I work out of the Mill Valley office. And all my contact info is on Best of Investing. I have a bio there.
Very good.
Yeah, happy to help.
So, Mike, a couple of one email sort of goes into the other. One is, how often should I review my investment portfolio, and how do you work? What do you charge for your services?
An investment portfolio is probably, if it's set up right to begin with, is best left not looked at often, believe it or not.
Okay.
And I say that because looking too often tends to create anxiety.
Yeah.
How is it doing compared to the guy who lives next door who's got this advisor or whatever? An investment portfolio really should be, in my opinion, a long-term buy and hold portfolio of diversified, very low-cost, primarily index funds. The asset allocation is what's going to determine your return, not so much the particular investments. That's from many well-established studies. If you look at it in a way that you think, well, the reason you don't really need to look at it is if it's tracking the markets, and in a well-diversified index fund portfolio should track the market, it will track the market.
Right.
If you're looking at it a lot, it probably means you have actively managed funds, and you're either doing it yourself or being advised by someone who's trying to beat the market, and therefore you're looking at it to see, is it beating the market?
Yeah, I can see, like, if you think, let's say that the European market is the way to go, as an example, I wouldn't want to pick a specific company. I'd rather say, you know what, if I think the European market's the way to go, get an index fund that kind of covers the whole basis. Right?
Yeah, and basically, when I first meet with a client, I look at their entire financial picture and determine should they even be in the markets at all. For the most part, of course, most people should be in the markets to some degree. Not everything they have should be in the markets, but most people need increasing assets that are increasing over time in value. Now, it can be real estate, it can be bonds, stocks, but you generally don't want to park your money in a mattress because you'll be losing 2 or 3% a year to inflation, and that's not a good long-term investment. But once the asset allocation is set up to determining what is the, is it 60-40, is it 50-50, it just needs to be monitored, but it doesn't need to be actively looked at by the investor, and doing so is harmful. And there's a reason that over the last 40 years, I think the U.S. stock market has returned 9% on average compounded, and the average investors earn 3%.
Wow.
And that's partly because they look at it so much.
You know, it's
And they
interesting.
go, okay, it's time to buy, or it's time to sell, or
Yeah.
why isn't this one doing well? What you just said, Edward, about determining should you be in the European market, probably every portfolio that's initially set up should have exposure to developed markets.
Yeah.
And as far as saying, well, I think it's going up, that's timing. That's
Yeah,
market
yeah.
timing, and that's what leads to that 3%, that 6% shortfall.
If
Is
you
people
get
saying,
out
I
the
think
wrong
it's going
time.
up.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people I've met through the years who, when the Dow hit 10,000, were sure it was going to go down and they were going to get out and then get back in.
And isn't there a really compelling stat that if you sit out even like the
Yes.
worst
Yeah.
3 or 4,
Yeah.
9 days or whatever it is, and
Yeah.
your return drops dramatically.
And there's a fantastic quote along the lines of market timing, getting in and getting out, having that feeling like, okay, it's high right now,
Right.
or it's going lower, has caused, getting in and getting out has caused more harm than any market crash ever did.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you know,
Because almost every market crash so far has recovered.
Right.
But
That's
market
true.
timing, there are people who are still out,
Right.
who got out when it was at 8,000.
Now it's too high and they're not getting back in.
And they're not
Right.
getting back in,
Yeah.
or they're overconfidence is probably behavioral psychology and finance is really a large portion of why people do well. Most investors are overconfident.
Yeah.
Just like most, you ask the average driver, are you an average driver, are you a better than average driver?
Of course.
90% will say yes. And the same goes for investors. Oh, I can beat the market. Oh,
Yeah.
sure. 95% of professionals can't beat the market.
Yeah.
But you know, it's interesting because I'm going to say a statement. You tell me if this is true or not. If financial advisors, you know, the typical ones, let's say that are charging, let's say 1%, I'm just making
Right,
up
right.
just the average one charging 1%
And
a
that is
year.
about the
That's
average.
about the average. Okay. And if they took your advice about they really shouldn't be in and out too often, if I'm the client and I'm paying 1% a year and I see that my advisor's not really doing anything, isn't that, aren't I going to be kind of like, well, why am I paying him? And then the advisor almost feels like he has to do something to justify his fee.
Well,
That
and
kind of-
that is a large justification for those fees, and those fees are coming down. They have to come down because we know from hundreds of studies that have been done that very few advisors relatively, or hedge fund managers, or mutual fund managers will outperform a basic low-cost diversified index fund that costs the investor about 0.1%.
Right.
And so if that's true, if advisors on average, for the most part, cannot beat the market, and not only can they not, but if you pay them to try and beat the market, they
Yeah.
might severely underperform the market.
Good point.
So
Double
you're
whammy.
taking a big risk that you usually don't want to take.
Okay.
And so if the funds themselves are costing 0.1%, what is the justification for someone to pick those funds and say, I will charge you 10 times more for that? If there's no justification, basically.
Yeah.
And the only justification can be, well, I can beat the market. I can get you that extra 0.9% by beating the market by that amount, even though it's shown that only 5% of professionals can do it, and we never know whether the ones that did were lucky.
Okay,
It could have been a random
so
outcome.
Mike Zaylin does not charge commissions. Mike Zaylin does not charge 1% of assets because
Right.
obviously he's against that. I'm thinking, how does Mike Zaylin feed his family?
Well, you can feed your family the same way that CPAs, attorneys, mortgage brokers, and other people feed their families by charging a fee for the service that's appropriate.
Okay.
That's the first thing. If people would stop hearing percentages, or when they hear percentages, they would start thinking dollars,
Yeah.
the percentage would be harder to pay. There's an old thing in business which says people will pay any amount of an indirect fee. But
Yeah.
a direct fee quoted in dollars, now that's a different story. They'll fight on that.
Yeah.
And if I went into a car wash and the owner said, well, I'm going to charge you 1% of the value of your car to wash
Yeah,
your car,
right.
or if I were a CPA and said, I'm going to charge you 1% of your net worth or whatever you
Right,
made,
yeah.
Right.
and suddenly people, we would all laugh. Or if an estate planner said, well, I'm going to charge you, 2% of the value of your estate. Well, isn't it a professional skill to provide financial and investment advice the same as other professional skills?
Well, it's
Why
interesting.
can't it be quoted on a dollar basis per an hour or an annual flat fee that justifies the amount of time and expertise like any other profession?
Some years back when we were remodeling the house, I was interviewing architects, and this one guy basically said, "Yeah, I'll charge X% of of how large the remodel is." I said, "Well, wait a minute though. If I choose more expensive faucets, then you're basically going to charge me more. He says, that's right. I said, next.
Yeah.
I said, no. You charge a decent hourly rate, and I think that's fair.
Exactly. It's
You
a
know,
professional service.
I find myself more and more, and I'm happy to answer the question, when I talk with clients for the first time, sometimes they'll ask, and I have no problem answering the question, but then when they don't ask, sometimes I'll just, if it's appropriate, I'll just float out there, I'll say, okay, well, so guys, don't you want to know how I get paid? And the answer is always yes. It never is no, we don't care about that. And you're absolutely right, Mike. I mean, we get paid as a function of the loan itself. We're regulated by Dodd-Frank. We have to get paid that way. But yeah, if we were to charge up front for that, it would be very, very different environment.
Well, and it's easy to see why people would rather charge you 1% than a flat fee, because if you have $1 million and I quote you a fee of 1%, that sounds a lot less painful than $10,000. I can't tell you how many people I've met who would rather pay 1% of $1 million than $5,000.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
And the thing is, if you're taking percentage, you go, oh, it's 1%. Well, if you're going to make me 8%, then I really only made 7. So
I
that's okay.
I get to keep 99% of what I already came to you with that I worked my whole life for.
Right.
That's a good point.
It's because they can get away with it, but if investors become smarter, they will understand that you can now put together investment portfolios that really should probably cost 0.25%, and then the advisor should be making up anything additionally by expert financial advice on retirement, Social Security, tax planning,
No, that sounds fair.
like any professional service.
So how do people get a hold of you if they want to do that service?
They can reach me at 415-785-4585.
Okay. Madrone Financial Advisory.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay, we're going to cut to our third and final commercial breakfast. What am I thinking? It makes me hungry. Okay, here's our third trivia question. In the movie Field of Dreams, what ballpark does James Earl Jones' character, Terrence Mann, go to as a youngster growing up? You know this one.
He's got the
All right, the first 3 callers with the correct answer win a free 3-day 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Call 888-912-1190 to answer this question. In the movie Field of Dreams, what ballpark does James Earl Jones' character, Terrence Mann, go to as a youngster growing up? Excuse me, stay with us. The Best of Investing will be right back. That one you know, right?
He's got that one.
You don't know?
I don't know.
Did you ever see the movie?
Yes, I did. I can't remember.
Fenway Park.
Oh, really?
I don't know if anyone's called you or not. I can just, a few weeks or a month.
If they tell me you did, I'll tell you. For sure. Yeah.
No, that's okay. I don't care.
I've referred to people.
I
Rob,
usually
he's been good.
Yeah, no, definitely. Steve Ella was, and you are.
I know. Steve has a great reputation. I don't know him well.
He did about 7 loans from me over
Yeah.
many years. He's a really good guy with Bay Equity.
Yeah, he's a good guy, and
Yeah.
the escrow officer I use, I think, also works. He sends all his
Yeah,
transactions.
Steve is a good guy.
She's
You guys
really
should
good.
meet sometime.
Yeah. No, you know what? He called up. Must have been about a year ago now, and then he had to go on vacation. But we were going to meet for coffee.
Oh yeah, you guys should.
He's like, I know you probably aren't, thinking about a move, but yeah, he's a good guy.
He's a really good guy. When you work with someone that long, you know them inside and out too.
And he's also, he's the kind of guy where, like, there's people in my field where if they said, I talked to Steve Bella and he said this, I believe it.
Right.
There are other guys who are like, they told me I can't do it. Like, yeah, they don't know what they're talking about. So, he's one of those guys. And I think pretty much widely respected as that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
He was with WAMU for a long time. Back in the day.
Well, I won't hold that against him.
Right, exactly. I don't even hold it against him.
We've got 7 minutes and 50 seconds left.
Okay.
Anything you want to specifically cover?
I got a few things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Goes kind of quickly.
Yeah.
Sure. I think it was pretty good. You had some good information. Okay, here we go. Well, welcome back to the Best of Investing. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mike Zaylin and Rob Spinoza. We've got the third commercial break. We asked this trivia question. Mike thinks he knows the answer. In Field of Dreams, what ballpark does James Earl Jones' character, Terrence Mann, go to as a youngster growing up?
Well, it's got to be the most classic, famous ballpark in America, baseball park in America, Fenway Park.
And you would be wrong. I think they went to that when he was an adult. Didn't he go? Then they were talking about
if
that.
it's the best ballpark, then it's got to be Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, Evans Field.
Oh wow, Brooklyn.
Wow.
So
Evans
yeah.
Field. 0 for 3.
Okay, the best former park in America.
Former park.
Yeah,
Yes.
former park.
Okay, Rob, you got a couple of things.
Well, I have a little cartoon I'm going to share with you guys. So it's a real estate agent, and she's writing an ad, and it says, you know, it's got
Lovely.
the balloon above her is geez, these ads are getting harder to write, and you see a lovely 3-bedroom, 2-bath with rolling lawns crossed out, pool crossed out,
yeah.
fireplace crossed out. So
Must have lived in Marin.
yeah, right. So that brings up two things, and I thought we could take it in either direction. One is obviously the fireplace thing is unique to Marin because they're basically making it impossible to maintain a wood burning fireplace. Is what it is. So you know, all these agents have properties out there, and you're trying to sell all these features, and they're all becoming harder to sell. A nice green lawn is not a nice thing anymore when you know that costs of water are going to go up. Pool, all the same things. And I was talking with some people over the weekend that were from out of state, and we were having to be in Palm Desert of all places, and we were talking about the water shortage. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on how you think this thing is going to play out economically, because in the conversations I was having, one of the individuals said, you know what you do with water? You do the same thing you do with any other commodity. If it ain't working, you change the price. And I mean, for California, do you think that will be a solution for our water shortage? And how do you think it's going to play into real estate in general? Any thoughts on that?
It really depends on how long this water crisis continues and whether the desalination plants that are thought of as being alleviating to the problem, how well that will work out, how quickly. Yeah, if it goes on for too long,
But do you really? I mean, I don't think anybody considers water usage when they purchase a home. I never hear that.
No.
Do you ever think of that? I mean, do you think that's going to be a factor coming up with real estate?
I mean, only if you saw maybe, you know, a large lawn and a big pool and all this stuff, then you might think of it. Other than that,
Yeah, it's interesting. The other thing I wanted to talk about was days on market. So I have another stat here where it talks about the median days on market by state. And this is interesting because California right now is in the 30 to 45 day category. So California, Colorado, Hawaii, Louisiana, Nevada, North Dakota, Texas, and Washington, D.C. Across the country, however, you see a lot of states most of the states falling into the 61 to 90 days on market. And here, you know, I think that's another, especially in the Bay Area, where we have some unique characteristics. It's not as easy to build, not as easy to develop, and you have robust employment factoring into that. We have a really brisk market right now, 30 to 45 days.
Well, and I mean, everything's local, right?
Right.
Ultimately.
Real estate, absolutely. Yeah.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, go.
Yeah. When we look at the local market, Rob, do you consider the 9 counties? Are you active in all the 9
Yeah.
counties? Would you say?
Yeah.
Is it? I think it is 9 counties.
9 counties in the Bay Area, and yes, I'm licensed in the entire state of California. But what we do see is most of what's unique, I think, to the Bay Area. This doesn't happen in the LA area as much, but here in the Bay Area, the 9 counties are generally kind of all in line. They all are following the same trend right now. You are seeing multiple offers on properties. You're seeing increasing value at a pretty good clip. You're seeing days on market down. When you go to LA and stuff like that, you'll see somewhat of a diversification with Riverside County, say the metropolitan LA, or downtown LA area. Same with San Diego, Inland Empire, things like that. It doesn't really work quite the same way. Here, I think again, partly because of our tech jobs and things like that, it's very, very much uniform in its value. Yeah.
Mike, we have another couple of minutes. Anything specific? Well, I would just encourage listeners to know your costs. There are a lot of products that are sold that very high-cost mutual funds, and a lot of times, in my experience, 90 to 95% of investors have no idea what their funds cost them. These are the people that I see who come to see me. They don't know how to look up their fund costs on Morningstar. They don't know how to understand how much turnover affects their taxes. Turnover in an actively managed mutual fund is often 70 to 80% of the entire portfolio every year, which generates a lot of short-term capital gains. And there's too much focus on pre-tax returns. And it's very easy for a mutual fund company to say this is our return, but how does it affect you if 80% of the portfolio is being turned over?
Right.
And on an after-tax basis, it might be 2 or 3% worse than the market as a whole.
Well, that's an interesting point.
Assuming every time you're investing, it keeps going up.
That's right. Or, of course, when they buy mutual funds, they're often buying embedded capital gains of positions that were established long ago in a market that's been going up for 6 or 7 years.
That's a very good point. Gosh, how do you find that out?
Well, I usually, when I meet with clients, do a complete review of their financial picture and portfolio review and tell them what the costs are and break it out and tell them what the tax consequences are if these funds are not held in IRAs or Roths.
Right.
And so that's.
Can you find out ahead of time though?
Oh, absolutely. You can go on Morningstar. That's a good way to look. Type in the ticker code, the ticker symbol, get an idea of what the expense ratio is. But in addition to the expense ratio, you'll have to estimate what the turnover and the 12b1 fees and other associated trading costs are adding to it. And often it's about a third to a half a percent. So know your costs. If you don't know your costs, assume that they're high.
See, that's the thing. Okay,
Go ahead.
Because if they're low, someone should have told you they were low and why they're low.
Yeah.
And if they're not, if you aren't hearing that, it's because they're probably high.
So if people deal with you, they're starting out much better than if they were going to deal with a salesman or someone charging a fee anyway, because it's going to cost them a lot less.
Well,
Right.
it may. The funds that I recommend are often 10 to 15 times less expensive.
Yeah.
But of course I have to charge a fee too, and that has to be taken into
Sure.
account.
Well,
So
sure, but
often when people go to see someone, they may just pay the commission, so they have to look at the total cost.
They do. We got to catch.
no problem at all.
Okay.
All
All right.
I was going to talk about the tax deadline because you made me think of something, but we'll cover it.
No, we'll cover that next time. Next year.
Yeah.
We're tax season done. Okay, thoughts for the day. It's lack of faith that makes people afraid of meeting challenges, and I believed in myself. Muhammad Ali said that. And I think it's the mark of a great player to be confident in a tough situation. John
Absolutely.
McEnroe said that.
Oh, he deserves it.
Yeah. Wow. John the Mouth. Okay, tune in next week to The Best of Investing. We're going to be giving away 9 more free vacations for answering trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm Edward Brown, for wishing you the best of investing. So long. Good show, guys.
That was the topic. That was the one we should have grabbed.